welcome in everyone to RedRaiders.com. I'm Shannon, this is Zach, and you're on the AJ Media pregame show for Texas Tech and Kansas this Saturday. Now, Zach, what do we think of Kansas?
Well, I'm going to go with the words of the old and wise Billy Tubbs, former Oklahoma basketball coach, who once said, "It's flat as hell and has a lot of wheat." Maybe, okay, kidding aside, the state of Kansas has a lot of lovely things. But as for the football team, they've had a rough year, Shannon. Of course, firing head coach Charlie Wise midway through the season. Bowen now takes over. Clint Bowen, a former linebacker for KU that a lot of Big 12 and Big 8 fans are very familiar with. You know, they've gotten a little bit better. The defense has really been the strong point of this football team, and they gave Oklahoma State last week everything they wanted in Lawrence, and if it wasn't for a Tyreek Hill kickoff return for a touchdown, Kansas had a chance to win that game. So Tech's going to have to strap it on and have their A game because the Jayhawks are not going to lay down for them regardless of how rough of a season they've had.
Now, speaking of their A game, can Tech still get to a bowl?
You know, this is a very tough question. I think right now the majority of Tech fans are probably expecting me to sit here and say, hell no, they can't make a bowl. But, you know, it is still possible. The West Virginia loss hurt a ton. They really needed to win that game to be a bowl-eligible team. They can still do it, and here's how you get there, Shannon. Iowa State and Kansas, absolute must-wins. Texas at home, a must-win. And then from that point on, you're going to have to get at least one more win, and that comes between Oklahoma, Baylor, and TCU. That is a tough trifecta, but I think they can get one of those, and maybe surprisingly, the game I think they can get of those three, Oklahoma in Lubbock. The Sooners have struggled mightily in Lubbock over really the history of the Big 12 Conference. It's a tough place for them to play, and they're not exactly steamrolling people right now. They're kind of struggling, so if Tech can beat Kansas and Iowa State and get those two out of the way, pop Texas at home, you could beat Oklahoma at home and still get to a bowl. I just think it's going to be tough to do.
Now, what is your best and worst case scenarios?
You know, I think best case scenario right now for this football team, I think they'll fall one game short of bowl eligibility. I think 5-7 is about the best we could hope for Texas Tech. Of course, they have 2 wins right now, and I'm saying those wins are maybe coming against, of course, Kansas, Iowa State, and Texas, which would be a positive, but still not what Tech fans want. They would rather have a bowl team. And as for a worst case scenario, you're not going to like to hear this. I think 3-9, something like that. Maybe you get a win between KU and Iowa State and lose the rest of them. But, you know, they played better against West Virginia. You hope we're not discussing that 3-9 mark in a few weeks.
Now onward to the actual game. How does Kansas win this?
I think you look at Michael Cummings, their quarterback, a name that should be very familiar to Texas Tech fans. 2 years ago, I hate to bring it up, a double overtime game where the Jayhawks darn near ruined a Texas Tech crowd's mood in a hurry. Michael Cummings and company had James Sims at that point in time, over 400 yards on the ground. Tony Pearson, a big part of that. He's back, a veteran part of that Jayhawk offense. They established the run. They can win this game. Defensively, Ben Heaney, the linebacker, Shannon, my goodness, fans, keep an eye on this kid. Blue-collar dude, BAMF, hashtag, you know, whatever you want to call him, Hutchinson, Kansas. Davis Webb is going to have to watch him on the short passing game. This is a dude that can read eyes and lay a hit on you and also intercept the ball. If he's allowed to maybe get that turnover margin going and do what he does, Kansas could win this game.
Now, how does Tech win this game?
You know, the thing I'm going to say is mix the offense. Last week, they really did a nice job. For 3 quarters against West Virginia, you know, I was harping on them all week. Run DeAndre Washington more. They did that, and sure enough, he had a very good game. They've moved Kenny Williams back over to the running back slot. He is going to get more carries this week or an opportunity to be a blocking back in that offense. If Tech can mix the run and set up their pass the way they were for the first 3 quarters against West Virginia, very successful day against the Jayhawks, and we might even see a wide margin of a score. Defensively, what we alluded to during the Kansas segment, shut down the quarterback run. If they limit Michael Cummings and any of the read option game with Pearson as a part of that, I do not think Kansas can throw the ball for success consistently enough to beat Texas Tech. If that defense contains that quarterback, going to be a good day for the Red Raiders.
Now, this is a very pivotal game for the Red Raiders.
You know, Shannon, it's actually kind of surprising that we would sit here and be talking about the Kansas game on homecoming. Should be a cupcake, a good day for all the fans and everyone to enjoy as being a pivotal game, but it sure as hell is, and frankly, here's what it comes down to. We discussed that scenario earlier in the show about a bowl game. You got to win today. The other reason you got to win is if you lose this football game, it's very possible Texas Tech finishes dead last in the Big 12 Conference, and that is not something anyone associated with this program or a fan of this program wants to go through. This is a gut check time for Texas Tech. You have to beat Kansas and preferably beat them by a wide margin. Maybe launch some confidence for this football team where they can win some games over the second half of their schedule. If you lose to Kansas, you have no one but yourself to blame because, frankly, those fans don't pay a ton of money to sit in a crowd, sign over checks for booster clubs, and whatever it is else they do, they have every right to be extremely pissed off if you lose this game to Kansas, and don't be surprised if their butts are not in the seats for those marquee games against Texas and Oklahoma. This is a huge game for Texas Tech. They have to beat the Jayhawks. There is no alternative. You do not want to finish dead last in the Big 12 Conference.
Now, Zach, it's time for us to pick the game. Let me go first this time.
Abs, have at it.
All right, I'm going to pick Texas Tech 35-28, mainly because I think they had a gut check during West Virginia. I think the first 3 quarters, they showed themselves, they proved themselves, they had a lot of confidence. I think if they show that against the Jayhawks, this should be an easy game.
You know, I'm right with you there. I think it is a Texas Tech win. However, I think I was leaning towards picking a much wider score, but that Oklahoma State-Kansas game spooked me a little bit. Of course, Oklahoma State has been known to lay an egg every now and then, but Kansas played better. They are more inspired under Clint Bowen. I think Texas Tech has too many offensive weapons. They cannot lose this football game. Close, but they get a win there. I'm going to go 31-24 Texas Tech. I just think Jakeem Grant, Devin Lauderdale, DeAndre Washington, some of the skill position people for the Red Raiders going to be way too much for Kansas to contain.
And that's going to do it for us in the AJ Media pregame show. Be sure to stay on RedRaiders.com and LubbockOnline.com and read all our writers' lovely content.
They work hard, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Please go read. They'll get you prepped for Tech in Kansas.
Yes. All right, and that should do it for us. I'm Shannon.
I'm Zach.
And you are on RedRaiders.com.